Highly successful individuals are always focused on what's next, but they often don't take time to reflect on their journey and how far they've come. I'm Craig Heatherly, host of the Path Less Travel podcast, where we dive into the journeys of extraordinary leaders. Their success rarely follows a straight path, and that's what makes their story so remarkable. Now let's dive into this week's episode after a brief message from our sponsors. Looking for top talent in tech or professional fields? Avero Talent connects businesses with exceptional candidates specializing in tailored recruiting solutions that match the right skills to your team's needs. Whether you're building a team or searching for a tough-to-fill position, Avero Talent delivers the expertise you need to hire smarter, faster, and with confidence. Let us help you find your next star employee.
At Cressy Leadership, we don't just train leaders, we transform business and change lives. Employees learn to communicate around difficult challenges. Leaders build skills that create a thriving culture. Companies become healthier and more successful. We're Erin Cressy, Mickey Hay, and Anna McEachran, your expert partners, trainers, and coaches. Join the organizations already thriving with Cressy Leadership.
Less Travel podcast. This week we featured the CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of Northern Indiana Corridor, Duane Wilson. Duane, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Craig, for having me here. I'm excited to talk about leadership, one of my favorite topics.
Yeah, it is. We were talking about it just a little bit ago. This has just been a lifelong journey for you, it appears. So I'm excited to get into it. You've now been the CEO for around 60 days.
Yes.
What has that been like?
I'll have to tell you, it has not been easy, but it has been smooth. I'm very fortunate that taking this role on is really a passing of the baton. I was the COO for 5 years, and so I knew how things worked. I was a part of building where we are today, and so handing it off from our previous CEO, Jacqueline Cronk, was actually fairly easy. The biggest challenge for me is understanding the depths of information or the breadth of information or the nuanced gray areas. But all in all, it's actually been a really good transition. I feel so supported by the staff, the board, and the community.
A big thank you to Senior One Care for sponsoring today's episode. Founded in 2006 by Carl and Kyle Bossing, this family-owned business has provided compassionate in-home care for nearly 2 decades. If my family needed a caregiver, I'd call Kyle. With 6 Indiana locations, they give you the peace of mind while your loved ones receive the care they deserve. Learn more at senioronecare.com. I'd like to ask guests what the advice would be if they were to look back on a younger them, or just advice to a younger leader. Any advice would you give to yourself 60 days ago prior to moving into this position?
I think the advice that I would have given myself is, even though it feels like it's going to be easy because you've been here, there are always challenges that you don't anticipate. So it's be ready for anything and stay focused and stay positive.
Tell us about the club here. You mentioned your predecessor, Jacqueline Cronk, and you guys were together for a number of years, and the club had grown from 5 locations to about 38 now.
Yes.
Serving 250 kids to around 4,300 now. Tell us about the club, what's happening today, and then also maybe what's next, because it feels like there's always something next here with this club.
I would say that the DNA of our club is that we solve problems. We want to be a significant force within the community to solve problems. So just a brief history of our growth that got us to where we are today is when Jacqueline and I came on in 2020, right at the very beginning of COVID. And so we took it upon ourselves we need to serve the community and meet the needs of the students who are doing e-learning, but they're at home with no supervision. So we opened up these e-learning sites. Then when schools began to go back, we realized there are students there who have not had solid instruction. So there's been learning loss during that period of time when kids were not in school. So we started this program We call it Strive, but it's really academic enrichment after school, solving the learning loss program. And we just grew from 5 to 21 sites. And then we saw that there was a problem with not very many after-school programs in the rural community. So we expanded out into 5 additional communities where there were no out-of-school services. And so that's the DNA. We want to solve problems of the community. And with this rapid growth that we've had over the course of the last 5 years, the transition between Jacqueline and I is really now, we've been going at breakneck speed, flying at up to 50,000 feet. Now we're going to level off, check the bolts, and we're really going to mature into our growth. We're going to get stronger, we're going to get better, and we're also going to keep growing as well, but we want to do it in a much more intentional, maybe even a slower pace.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you a little bit more about it. As you change seats, do the goals stay the same? Does the vision stay the same? I guess, how do you balance that as you step into the CEO role, knowing that where it was prior to you and where it's at today? Do you change much, or?
I think our mission is always going to stay the same, to inspire and enable young people, especially those who need us most, to reach their full potential. That's going to stay the same. What changes around us is the community, the environment, the climate, the social climate. All of those things change. And so that will, in some measure, dictate how we meet the needs of the members that we serve. And so our mission will stay the same, our vision will stay the same, the tactics and our strategies will adjust. And so for me, my transition has to be less operational, even though that's a part of who I am, but it has to be more strategic. It has to be more visionary so that we can meet the moment with our members. That's great. So the title of the podcast is The Path Less Traveled. When you think about just your journey, how do you relate? I relate significantly because I didn't plan to get here. I think most of my life has been, I've showed up and found out that, wow, I didn't intend to get here. So I didn't intend to be the CEO. I didn't intend to be the COO. I had an entirely different path for myself. But I'm a person of faith, and so I believe I wound up the place where I'm supposed to be. I'm excited to be here as the CEO and to see what's next. I've been impressed with just each encounter that we've had, and when the topic of leadership has come up, I mentioned earlier, you've got this extensive interest and clear capability of leading. Where does that come from? How long has it been that way? I've been a leader since I was 21 when I was in the Air Force. But admittedly, Craig, I was not a very good leader at that age. I thought authority and power mattered, but it wasn't who I was as a person, but that's how I was taught to lead. But I had a couple of encounters with people that really made me think about, I can actually make a difference, not just in the work life of someone, but in someone's entire life. So I had a significant switch in my leadership style, is how can I be the support that someone needs? How can I inspire someone to meet a goal? And I realized leadership is about mobilization. It's getting people to accomplish the mission in a way that they enjoy it. And they get a lot of satisfaction, they get a lot of fulfillment out of it. And that's the heart of the leader that I want to be, and that's the people that I want, how I want to influence the people that follow me. The enjoyment piece. Yes. I understand where we want to go, but how do you, as a leader, identify what it is with each individual that's going to allow them to have joy in the journey? Like, how do you identify that? And because that's the secret sauce. The only way I can do it is have them tell me. Whether it be I learn it very clearly, some people don't always articulate it that way, or I kind of learn it intuitively. But what I have to do, part of meeting the mission is also meeting the needs of the people that serve with you, serve alongside you. And so I let them tell me what brings them joy. And I do a lot of community builders as a part of my staff meetings, so I get to learn and hear what brings my staff joy. So you just come out and ask them. I ask them, yeah, what brings you joy? You don't have to read a 300-page book for that. Just what brings you joy? I love that. You're a continuous learner,
And my question to you is, as you have worked on your skill set, as you've learned more about yourself, what are you working on today to grow yourself as a leader, to take the next leadership jump? Is there anything specifically in the year 2025 or just this season of your life?
I think the biggest thing that I have to learn and grow in is I need to be able to, and this is the title of a book, come up for air. I have to be able, if I'm going to be the best CEO, I have to be strategic and not bogged down in the task. I'm a task-oriented person. I love to get in and get in the weeds and help. But what I have to be able to do is come up for air, take a breath, and pause, rest, recover, so that I can go back and win the day. And so everything from taking clarity breaks, that's something I have to schedule into my calendar. I also have to learn to say no more. I can't say yes to everything. And I have to realize what my role is very different than my role was. And so I need to be willing to say no because it's for the betterment of the organization, and sometimes for the betterment of my family, because I can't forget about my family, that I can't say yes to everything for everyone out there. So that's my number one area of growth right now.
Has that been identified in this quarter, or has this been something that you've been working on over some time?
It's something that I've been working on over time, because in my role as COO, it's very easy to just, as you're looking at the entire operation, just get in and do whatever it takes to get it done. That's what you're called to do as a COO. But my wife and I were talking as we were transitioning into the CEO role, and she looked at me and she said, "You're going to be even more busy right now." And the way she said it really took me. So internally, and I haven't even told her this yet, I said, I don't want this job to impact my family. And so there's some intentional things that I do. I come in early in the morning, check my emails. I can't believe I'm going to say this. Today I have like only 14 unread emails. That's significant, down from 100. But I've changed my habits so that I can go home, not just to be there, but to be attentive.
What other habits do you have? Because as you talk about the COO role to the CEO role, habits have changed a little bit.
That's correct.
What other habits guide just your life? Because productivity matters, quality matters. What habits are you kind of reevaluating at this period? Because I know that there are a lot of individuals that slide over one seat, and it's just one seat from one role to the next, but a lot more has been, you've got to reevaluate things to an extent.
So what I try to do, that's two questions. So the first part of it I'll ask is, what do I do? What habits do I have to meet the productivity needs that I want? So I'm nerdy this way. There's a book that's called Measure What Matters, and it talks about OKRs. And so what matters to me is my family life. What matters to me is my work life. What matters to me, my social life. What matters to me is my spiritual life. Those things matter to me. And so instead of just saying what matters to me, what are the things that I need to do that will reflect those things matter? So for example, I remember setting an OKR objective. It says, and this was my objective for my wife. I want my wife to feel about me the same way that those who like me in the community, or even more. I didn't want to be this great guy out at work, and my wife just hate the fact that I come home. So little simple things. We want to average going to lunch at least once a week. So that means in a year, we should have gone to lunch at least, I think I said 35 times over the course of the year, just going to lunch. And it's being intentional about that, whether it be a lot of different things, even with my family, my parents who are getting older. I want to sit and have coffee at their table at least once a quarter. So it's really about being intentional to become the person that you want to be.
Wow. How long have you approached things like this in that manner? Has it been a while? Or?
I would say it's probably been, I think I read the book Measure What Matters maybe 7 years ago, 6 years ago now. I think probably 7 years ago. And I think what it did, it allowed me to, I love framework and systems. It allowed me to make what I really wanted to do a system, and it made it easy. So it's been about 7 years I've been doing that.
So that book had a big impact on your life, clearly.
Yes.
Any other books come to mind that have made that kind of an impact in your life?
Yeah, there's a book by Bob Chapman, and he runs a company, I think it's Barry Waymather Company in Wisconsin, and it's Everybody Matters. That is the name of that book, Bob Chapman. And here's this CEO in a large manufacturing company, and that really cares about the people. He didn't emphasize the profit. He didn't emphasize the productivity. He saw the key to profit and the key to productivity is really caring about the people in his company. And he walks through what happened when they went through the 2008-9 recession and how he treated them. And it really, that guides me in how I want to lead this organization that has almost 400 people.
Well, if you were to describe your leadership philosophy and how you lead, or how you would like others to perceive you as a leader, what comes to mind there?
Two things that I would tie together. One, mission-minded and people-minded.
Mission-minded and people-minded. Okay.
And how that all ties together is, and it has to be both. It has to be both, because you can be so focused on people that you just have this love fest, but you don't do the work. Or you can be so focused on the mission as to you're driven, but you leave people behind. So for me, it's a combination of the two. And again, I like to say it's inspiring others to accomplish shared goals. I want people, mission-minded people, and I want people-minded people. And if we can just get together and enjoy the journey to accomplish the mission. And my role as CEO in that capacity is to inspire them to get excited about the work.
Do you find within those two buckets, one that you have to maybe be a little bit more intentional with, just based upon who you are as an individual?
Yeah, I have to be more intentional about the people, because I do like productivity, because a lot of times results, it's easier to see the results in that area. Right. The numbers grow, the arrow goes up. And so it takes a little more intentionality, because I'm an outgoing introvert. I need a lot of alone time to recharge, but I have to do those extra things to connect with the people.
The outgoing introvert, have you known that about yourself for a long time? Or, because I think this is important to pull on the thread, because how we show up, who we are, what our strengths, what our weaknesses are, how others perceive us, there's a lot there. And unless you spend the time to dig into that and truly understand like what makes you unique, right, it's hard to lead yourself, but it's really hard to lead others. What's that discovery process been like for you?
I think the first leg of my journey in the military, I wasn't really in tune with that, because what the military kind of demands, it's do the job. You don't have to connect with people. There's a term that we would call fraternization. You don't really connect on a personal level with your team. But then leaving the military and then being a leader, you just realize, I'm realizing to do all of that, I'm getting drained. Of course, I'm getting older as well. So I have to really understand what I need as a leader in order for me to be effective as a leader. And a lot of it is I need to connect with people, and I need time by myself to grow. So it's been later that I've really discovered that. And even now, I leave my door closed, not because I don't have an open door policy, because I need to be recharged, so I'll always be talking to people. So it's a continual journey. And even as CEO, I'm figuring out, how do I make this work in my new role? Because I want to be accessible, but I can't be accessible all the time. So it's tricky.
Yeah, and this will be my last question on this topic, but I find it really interesting. The people-minded focus of yours. You mentioned earlier how you've got to build something into your calendar. I forget specifically what it was.
Clarity breaks.
Clarity breaks. Are there things that you have to set reminders for in order to be more present with individuals or pour into individuals? I carry around a couple of note cards that allow me to be more present in the moment, but then also to develop things in my life that I've identified as being important to me. And it's a daily reminder.
Right.
Things that you have that allows you to be better in that area?
I do. And actually, it's all the books over there that are significant to me. I turn around and I see that, like you see, Measure What Matters up there.
Yeah.
You'll see all those books are right there. That those define who I am as a leader. And now, though I've read more books than that,
Yeah.
but those are the books that right in front of me remind me of that.
When you look back on your life, and a couple of kind of deeper level questions, you look back on the things that you've accomplished, and being the CEO here, you've accomplished a lot to get to this point. Anything that comes to mind that you're most proud of?
That's a great question. This is going to sound, it's not an accomplishment, to be very honest with you. One of the things I've learned in my life, you can get an award, and then next year someone else is going to get that same award, and you're going to be forgotten. And so what I'm most proud of is I look back is my growth. We talk about productivity. But I want to look back and be different as well. And so I'm hoping that I will grow even beyond this. I joke around and I tell people, I'm not going to be found dead at that desk. So I want to grow and figure out what's next for me too. It's all about growth in my life. So I think for me, to answer your question in short, is as I look back, it's how I've adapted to the moment and changed and grown.
When we talk about productivity, another word that gets talked about a lot is the word success.
Right.
How do you measure? How do you define success for Duane Wilson? Has that evolved, or has that been a constant for you?
It has evolved. And I don't know if I have a definition right now. I think what I would say now, and this is very ambiguous, but not having to have more.
Not having to have more.
For example, when I was the COO, I didn't have to be the CEO to be successful. I was content right where I was. And so now I want to be successful now because every day I do my job well and not have to have more than what I have. So that's success for me right now.
I love that. We've talked about some frameworks as a leader you've got to have. Challenging conversations, whether it be for a project, whether it be an individual that works here, or with families within the line of work that we do here at the club. Do you have a framework for how you approach hard, difficult, challenging conversations?
I do. Oh, I do actually. I do. I love systems and frameworks.
This is great because, keep going, I'll let you finish.
Because I think the best way to have difficult conversations, the easiest way to have difficult conversations is to have had the early conversation about expectations. So you set the expectations, you agree upon the expectations, then as you're journeying together, because this is people-minded, mission-minded, you're having conversations, you're doing great, you have a little opportunity for growth, and you're having these conversations because it's based upon expectations, and then you grow and you go together. And so when it comes to that point where you have to have a difficult conversation, we all agree that you're not meeting the expectation that we all agreed upon. So now it becomes that decision point. I'm not going to say it's easy, but at least it's mapped out, right, and it's understandable, and there's a level of agreement. And so you bring them to that point of, yeah, maybe this job isn't the best one for me, or maybe this role is not the best for me, or maybe I need to really up my game a little bit better. So I find out that it starts in the difficult conversations start with the easy conversation of setting expectation.
You mentioned the word grow and growth. Can you recall a setback that's allowed you to have a stepping stone towards growth in a thing in your life that you'd be open to sharing and others benefiting from? Anyone come to mind?
I think several. Well, I would say many years ago, I was leading a nonprofit that really the model was not sustainable. But it was a great mission, but the model and the system was not sustainable. And it was a significant financial setback, and it was a significant, what I would say, it felt like a significant failure. But what it did do, it allowed me to rethink, how can I never let this happen again, number one. Number two, what I also realized is that I'm actually still alive after I failed. And you know what? Not very many people were paying attention to me. There's so many things we're fearful of about failure that we really sometimes don't accomplish all that we could accomplish. And so it's helped me not be afraid to fail. Of course, I don't want to fail, which is why I have all my systems in place to make sure, but it's not going to kill you if you fail. Just be aggressive, take a risk. You never know what's going to happen.
The quote, chance favors the aggressor.
That's right.
Comes to mind as you're speaking. And I was actually having this conversation last week in a car ride back from Chicago with a coworker, and it was, look at all these people that are driving on the road, and look at all these homes that we're passing by. And you think about your problems, your own individual problems, and we all start to just magnify them. And in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. That's true.
God willing, there will be another moment or another day,
right?
And then we'll forget about those things.
That's
so it's like taking a step back and saying, all right. And I love the fact that you mentioned earlier, you've identified the areas in your life that matter most,
right?
And you've got intentionality around it. A couple of final questions here as we wrap up. We've talked about failure. We've talked about growth. We've talked about accomplishments. Let's talk about investments. As you look back on your life and the things that you've invested in, and it could be money, time, energy, effort, is there a major investment that you look back on and you saw the ROI, or you're reaping the fruits of the ROI right now? Anything come to mind?
So the first thing, I will give you two things of investment. One is the investment in my family. I just spent this past weekend with my parents. They celebrated their 60th anniversary. And I happened just to be with my sons down there, and just seeing how my family was really proud of them, and just watching them interact and reflect upon their success. That's an investment that I'm very happy that I made. But I think in my career, think of the investment of time in learning. I think that has been, probably the biggest investment that has impacted my growth. Never feeling like I've arrived, but always feel like I'm heading up. And I think there has been listening to great leaders in my life individually, people that I know, or listening to great leadership books, because right now I don't have a lot of time to sit and read, so I sit and listen, or I walk and listen. But I think that has been the investment of my family, and invested in the investment of my own growth.
Two final questions, and I'll get your final thoughts. Leadership pitfalls. What have you seen as a common leadership pitfall that you would advise others to just be aware of? They may just be blind spots, and they're blind spots for anybody in a leadership position, but what blind spot comes to mind that you've seen over your career?
I would say most leaders, what really trips them up is them not being mindful of their blind spots and working to overcome their blind spots. I'll give you an example for me. One of my blind spots is I don't need to be communicated with on a regular basis. It just not important to me. I'll know when I know, find out when I find out, not a big deal. And so I can tend to under-communicate. I can tend to under-communicate because I'll assume that everyone is like me. And so that's a blind spot that I have to work really hard to overcome. I have people on my team who will ask me, did you communicate? Did you communicate this? And so I think what happens, because there's no perfect person, so there's no perfect leader, but we have to overcome our blind spots and overcome our weaknesses. So I think that's a common pitfall. We do have our blind spots, and we just have to be intentional about not letting them impact our team or our leadership.
Did you identify that on your own, or did somebody identify that?
Well, when you're getting reminded and you keep getting criticism that you're not communicating, that's an indicator.
My last question for you. We talked about Jacqueline Cronk at the beginning,
Yep.
and how she left this place better than she found it.
Yeah, no doubt.
When it's all said and done, how do you want Duane Wilson to be remembered?
I think of the transition from Jacqueline to myself as passing of the baton. So when she passed this baton to me, she gave me great people. She left us in a great financial position. So I took the baton, and then when I pass the baton to the next leader, I want this to have a culture of collaboration. I want there to be a culture of unity around the mission. And I just want there to be a strong leadership unity that impacts all the way down to the YDP. We've had a lot of rapid growth, and we've had a lot of great productivity, but now I want that productivity to be equally matched with a very strong people-centered culture.
That's outstanding. What final thoughts, Duane, do you have that you want to communicate, whether it be here about the club, leadership in general? Yeah, the floor is yours.
I guess what I would like to leave the leaders with about my thought on leadership is, despite me being the CEO and having what I would say a level of authority, you do not have to have authority to be a great leader. You can be an individual contributor in an organization. You can be a sole proprietor in your business. Because for me, ultimately, what I'm looking for as a leader is to be influential in people's lives, to really change direction, accelerate the direction that they're going. And that really happens by influence. Because if you want people to accomplish a mission or a goal or something, it's really about them owning the journey, their own journey. And I think we influence them, not are authoritative in their lives to be able to get them to fully buy in. So we don't have to have authority in order to have influence. So seek influence.
That's great. Duane, thank you for doing this. I appreciate our conversation. That's it for this week's episode of the Pathless Travel Podcast. Until next week, have a great day.